G'day guys, Chris Durry here. Today I'm going to go through my 2021 mid-season All-Australian team. So let's get stuck in. So what I've got here is on the left-hand side we've got my All-Australian team, and on the right-hand side I've got ESPN's. So I got the idea from ESPN, and this was completed prior to the buys, and of course completing this now, this is after the buys have complete before we sort of resume with the full fixture of matches, I suppose, to put it that way. But yeah, so this is what I've come up with here, and I've got some different inclusions here for my team and different inclusions for ESPN's team. So to go through, so Tom Stewart, for me that's a no-brainer. So his one-on-one win rate is through the roof and among the absolute best in the competition, but then of course he's an intercepting beast. So I believe he had 10 intercept marks on the weekend, and then obviously huge for meters gained, really good kick out of defence. So having all those tools, for me, he's an absolute must in defence, and he was actually my first pick defender. So, and interestingly, he's a different addition in my team that ESPN didn't have in their team. So, yeah, so, and my evaluations of talent will be different to others, I'm sure. So whether Stewart is in everyone else's team, well, I guess that's up for you guys in the comment section below to let me know. So my fullback, so again I've gone a bit different to what ESPN have. So I've gone Harris Andrews. So for me, I'm big on intercepting. So if we're to compare, let's say, a Starcevic, who, credit to him, has been able to take the number one forward most weeks, stop him most weeks, be that negating player. But even if I'm to look at things like the one-on-one win rate, well, Stewart's clearly and decisively better. But then you've also got the rebounding and intercepting components. So for me, it's a no-brainer to have Stewart ahead of a Starcevic. As for a Harris Andrews versus a Stephen May, he's strong one-on-one, but the one-on-one win rate for Harris Andrews is pretty similar, so for me that's about a wash. And then from there, if I'm to look at rebounding, both can rebound. I'd give the points a bit more to May, but then we move into the intercepting components, and that's where Harris Andrews really runs away with it, where much better contested mark, much better intercept mark, much better in terms of just intercept possessions in general. So I'd have Andrews as the clearly in front guy, and even a Stephen May, even though I'd probably have him even a few spots further down, so I would even have probably, say, a Jacob Wiedering ahead personally, and there's quite a few others that I'd probably have in that same conversation. Darcy Moore on form, even though he had that period where he's playing forward, I also preferred as a key defender if I had to nominate another that I've enjoyed the play of early season. And again, he's got those intercepting components, but generates that drive too. So ultimately, I'm looking for that best mix of, where with the key defenders in particular, I really want those high volume interceptors, contested marks, and if they generate drive, then that's a bonus. Next spot across, so I've gone Daniel Rich. So again, another unique for my team, interestingly, but in terms of his kick out of defence, the meters gained component, I just really want that sort of rebounder back there, where if I feel I'm pretty secure with enough guys who are capable enough to get stops and I've got the interceptors there, well, having a Daniel Rich I think is probably a good balanced move. So I'm not finding I'm all that impressed really with the general defenders overall this year, but for me probably Rich is among those better performed, if not probably after, I'd say, Salem, that next best performs. So, and with Salem, of course, so he's intercepting, generating drive, he's able one-on-one, so again, ticks the boxes. He's a good sort of safe pick back there, having a good season. Jake Lever, so again, ESPN, I believe, have completely got this one right, so I don't know if he still is, but he'd be pretty close to, if not the top of the competition for intercept marks, probably up there for intercept possessions as well. Contested marks, he'd be pretty high. So really being so good in those areas, that's what I really want in defence. I really want those high volume interceptors, because ultimately up the field I want the pressure generation, and then I want guys in defence who can really intercept to a high level. And his one-on-one work is actually fine. If you actually look at his numbers, it's pretty comparable with a lot of the other key defenders, even slightly better than quite a few of them. So even that component I'm not too worried about with a Lever overall. And then I've gone Brody Smith. So again, I've gone a little bit different to ESPN here, and again, I just wanted that additional rebounder. Having that drive from defence, I find, is a really important component, and is very strong in that component. able enough interceptor, not a high volume interceptor, but then if you look at his one-on-one win rate, although he probably hasn't been exposed in too many contests, he's lost less than 10% of his contests, I believe, in having looked up the stats previously. So he also ticks the box in that component on form this year at least. So whereas a Bailey Dale, credit to him, big time improver, but for me, I just probably can't quite justify having him in there. He's not all-Australian. If there was a most improved award, Bailey Dale would be the top, certainly 1 to 3 in the AFL, but and Dale has actually been effective forward in seasons past also, but yeah, for me, I'd go a Brody Smith just for that, I guess, additional metres gained. His one-on-one win rate is a little better, and then also in terms of intercepting, pretty similar to a Dale. So yeah, for me, I like a Brody Smith. And the other component for me that makes having these rebounders in defence so, I guess, required is my choices on the wings, which are a bit different. So I don't have a traditional winger on my team, and that's purely because I don't see there as being one elite sort of outside midfielder in the competition. Some might disagree, and if you do, let me know in the comments section below who you would consider an elite outside player. Probably a McCluggage, who ESPN had in their team, would be about the closest for me, but yeah, look, I really think I'd go the sort of key forward type on the wing, where with an Aaron Nawson, where he's got that elite endurance, incredible contested mark, reads the game so well, so if you need another good number in defence, he can absolutely push back, be an intercepting force, which also he was as a junior, but then he can also push forward and be a factor. But I wouldn't consider Nawson necessarily ahead of a Walker or Hawkins as a key forward this year, just with his conversion so poor in front of goal. But yeah, on a wing, by all means, and having him pushing forward, being an additional forward 50 threat, I feel that's a really valuable component, and really a more optimal use of the wing position, even though it's not where he's playing, as I'm sure there'll be people in the comment section reminding me. I do feel it's the greatest and best use of the position. So given his level of form, I suppose, during the year, I think Nawson is probably the choice on that wing. And then Bontempelli, again, look, is obviously more inside than outside, but it's just, I guess, having him there where, again, he can push forward, and it's a rotational position. With the mids and forwards, they're rotational pieces. So being a dual position impact player, as a Bontempelli is, that's sort of what I'm really valuing, both through the midfield and up forward, because then that means you can have a big rotation, and you can also potentially have really high scoreboard impact at the end of the day from across a number of players. So I see a lot of value in that. One difference ESPN also had in defence was Darcy Moore. So they've elected to go for a slightly taller structure. And of course, Moore, he's out for the season now, and ESPN couldn't have predicted that. Had he not been hurt, maybe he would have been in my team, and his form, certainly other than when he was playing as a key forward, would have him pretty close to, if not in there. And I'd say possibly in the place of a Brody Smith. But yeah, look, with a Moore out, it makes my decision to have a Nawson in the side even easier on a wing. So just allows me to go with a few more rebounders in defence, not being necessarily as tall, and just taking my chances that way. I feel that's probably about the optimal way to structure up. Parrish, I want to give kudos to. Slow start to the season, but boy has he come on good. So obviously his inside work terrific, but also getting involved, hitting the scoreboard, getting the ball to the forwards. So they're all the things you want. So terrific form. If he keeps it up, he could be in this team at the end of the year. It'll be interesting to see whether he holds that spot, but in terms of form so far this year, I'm giving Parrish credit. Deserves to be in there thoroughly. Moving into the forwards, so Petrarca, again, he's that mid-forward. So again, as with a Bont, they're probably the two best players in the competition at the moment for mine in terms of those mids who can impact the game forward of centre. So for me, they're absolute musts, and they'll both be rotating obviously through the centre square, but also pushing forward here and there just to accommodate the others through the midfield as well. But in terms of just general forwards, look, you don't have any general forwards who, whether they're forward or mid, are on that level. So you really have to reward the very best players, which is really what my intention is here, as per what the All-Australian selectors would do, albeit with probably a little bit less, I guess, positional changes as I would with, say, a Norton on a wing, which is probably a bit more on the extreme end, many would say. But For me, Taylor Walker, absolute must. Phenomenal first half of the season. He's been the best key forward in the competition to date, it's fair to say. So credit to him to having really a career best year. And it's great seeing him playing the footy he is. So not only obviously is that he's that sort of marking threat, but he's obviously got the ground level craft as well. Hits the targets inside 50, hitting the scoreboards. So really having a great year. So really enjoying his play. So deserves to be there. Zorko, for me, he's a unique, I guess, compared to ESPN's side, but seeing obviously what he can do both as a forward and as a mid, that's really appealing to me. Where obviously put him through the midfield, he's that ball winner, good tackler, great ball user, but then again, forward of centre, same thing. He's great at ground level, so having that extra ground level piece is always handy. But then he also brings that forward pressure, hits those inside forward 50 targets. So again, I've got those high inside 50, high score involvement types, those who are going to be high sort of goal assists. So all these sort of mid forwards, so your Bonds, your Petrarcas, your Zorkos, they're all going to be high in all those areas. So that's what I really wanted to make sure I include. McDonald, Tip and Woody, I just wanted to go with one, I guess, pure small forward, and he's really that one there for me. And again, ESPN have got the same idea there as well. So obviously he's that premier crumbing forward at the moment, brings the forward pressure, hitting the scoreboard, but also beautiful ball user as well. Again, hitting those forward 50 targets, so really making life easy for everyone. So having all those components for me, he fits my team really well. Mostly as a structural fit, but nonetheless on form as well, he deserves to be there for mine. Tom Hawkins, so ESPN went with Harry Mccrae, and of course he's having a terrific season. Absolute contested marking beast, hitting the scoreboards, so he's having a breakout year, so understandable for those that have him, but for me I've gone Hawkins. So Hawkins for me is a better all-round player, so if you look at whether it's his tackle numbers, whether it's his ground ball winning components, setting up teammates for goals as well, he's got all those components, plus he's obviously got the contested marking and scoreboard impact. So just having that better rounded game. If there's going to be a stoppage inside 50, I want Hawkins to be taking that ruck work, because then he can just grab it out of the ruck and kick a goal. So having all those weapons at my disposal, I really want Hawkins in there for sure. Just because he's got that more diverse game with more ways of hurting you, which makes, I guess, playing against him even more problematic for opposition defenders relatively. And again, ESPN have done the same thing. So Green, they put Green a bit higher up the field. I like him close to goal, but again, great target, but then he's got the ground level stuff to go with it. So hits the scoreboard, sets up teammates inside 50, that's what I want. And one forward that ESPN had that I didn't really give consideration to, and look, I think there's other key forwards I'd pick ahead of him. So a Mccrae, I'd be going with ahead of him, even though he's not in my team. So there's others I'd be inclined to put ahead of a Darling. So yeah, look, he had a good first half to the season, but for me there'd be, I'd say, probably 4 or 5 key forwards I'd be picking ahead of him at this stage. It'd be reasonable to say. So obviously I've got Norton as well there as well. And then even a Jeremy Cameron, based on what, at least since his return, he's been doing, I'd also be tempted to pick ahead of him too. So going through the rucks, so obviously we've both got Gawn, so good decisions there. I've got Oliver, so does ESPN, and I've also gone Libber, so again, ESPN have him as well. So they've got the same idea. So I wanted 2 really strong contested ball winning mids who are great winning the ground balls. Libber's an incredible tackler, so having all those components there, I think it really just gives me that sort of punch out of the midfield, where it just secures first possession every time, and then I've got the classy names around them as well to ensure that sort of midfield balance, make sure it's not sort of a midfield that lacks class or speed. So I really wanted to make sure I have those components there too. And then here's a major difference here. So through the ruck, I wanted to give Nick Nat the kudos I feel he deserves. So in terms of his pure ruck work, well, he's absolutely terrific. When he's at the centre bounces, I don't really think there's anyone better in the competition. So Gawn's edge obviously is his contested marking, more mobile around the ground. So he's got those components. He can hit the scoreboard more, can be a bit more of a threat forward of centre. So you've got those sort of different components there. Whereas with a Nick Nat, well, is all power and all brute force. So if So, and look, a Gorn's going to get more hit outs as well, but with a Nick Nat, it's the damage he does, whether it's his dragging it forward, the pressure around the ball, just winning the ground balls, following up. For me, he's right on par just about with a Max Gawn as a ruck, and with a Gawn having a bit of versatility to his game, whether it's pushing forward, even pushing back behind the ball, it gives a Nick Nat a chance. And with Nick Nat not someone who plays a high percentage of minutes anyway, and having been able to show he can pair with a Dean Cox in the past as well, I feel really comfortable having those two rucks. So, and with what ESPN did, look, you can have a Harry Mccrae as a second ruck, that's certainly doable, but I really wanted to reward Nick Nat as someone who I would be, as with a Max Gawn for that matter, classing as a top 10 player in the competition on form this season. So I just don't want to pass up on that if I've got that chance. So, and look, I haven't gone too tall up forward nor too tall down back, which makes me pretty comfortable with that sort of tall, small balance there as well. And then moving on to the bench. So I've made it a priority here again to have those dual position forward mids. That, for me, that's a really important component. So having a Bolton, he's been incredible forward of centre this year. So, and he's actually been as impactful, if not even marginally more so than a Dusty. So, and having both of those guys, well, they cause incredible headaches. So both of them respectively hit the scoreboard, set up teammates inside 50. Bolton, he's got that aerial marking, obviously. Dusty, one-on-one isolated is incredible. They're both great at ground level, great skills. So they've got all those components. They can, of course, go through the midfield and be factors through there and really do damage. So having those pieces and having the really good players around them who I guess can take some attention off them, I would absolutely have those two in my team. No doubt about it. They're clear ins. They're not necessarily top 10 in the competition players this year. And Dusty is no longer the best player in the competition. And really he only was for a short period there with a Bonton, Petrarca now, at least based on the form so far this season, playing a lot better footy. But nonetheless, with a Dusty, just the impact when he wants to impact games is still so phenomenal, whether it's through the midfield, forward of centre, big weapon there. So really causes a lot of problems and will force the opposition defence to pay a lot of attention to him. So definitely someone I want in there. And I also went with a Nat Fyfe. So with a Fyfe as with a Dusty, maybe he's not in everyone's team, and that's absolutely fine. And with a Fyfe, even though he's been playing a lot of minutes forward and he's been missing a lot of shots on goal, which is a bit like what he was doing as a junior in 2009, where he'd have a set shot from 10 or 15 metres in front and spray it to one side or the other. But with what Fyfe's been doing as well in his minutes through the midfield, he's been absolutely dominant through there, whether it's looking at his contested possessions, whether it's his clearances. But then you obviously have him able to push forward and be that marking force, that, I guess, threat where you really have to watch him carefully forward of centre. So being that name player and attracting all the attention he does, I really wanted to reward him in this sort of team structure where there'd be a lot less pressure on him to really be that go-to guy. So being able to do that, he's absolutely in there for sure for me, ahead of a lot of the other mids that others may potentially be fancying. So with ESPN's bench to go through them, so Sam Walsh, breakout season, the inside role's working perfectly for him, big boost in his contested stuff. He's even hitting the scoreboard a little bit, setting up teammates forward of 50, so he's playing great footy. But for me, not quite inside my All-Australian team. So there's others that are higher volume contested players, but then also greater threats forward of centre. So as we can see with the likes of Bolton, Dusty, Fyfe, they're all stronger in terms of, I guess, as those first possession winners through the midfield, but then they're also greater threats forward of centre. So just wanting to maintain that dynamic to my team, I really wanted to go with, I guess, the guys that I went with in the end, just so then I can maximise that midfield rotation. Ollie Wines, phenomenal ball winner, but his pressure probably isn't quite on the level of some of these others that I've got in my team as well. And also whether he's as damaging forward of centre, I'd also put into question as well. So again, he's someone where you could absolutely have him in the mix, but for me, probably I just wouldn't quite have him ahead of others, given, I guess, I'm really looking for those dual position impact guys and viewing them as, I guess, the more valuable. And then a Bailey Fritsch. So for me, I personally wouldn't include him. Probably not enough of a contested ball winner. honestly, which will limit his consistency. But obviously, on a great Melbourne team this year, having a phenomenal season, hitting the scoreboard like mad. But as a forward, I'd probably not only be looking for that sort of, I guess, contested side, but also probably a higher pressure type. But credit to him, I think he's probably averaging about 2 goals a game, so he's having a really good season. But if I was to go for a Melbourne forward, I'd actually pick a Cozzy Pickett ahead of him. Just, I guess, for structural reasons, where I guess having those forward pressure specialists, well, that gives you, I guess, greater opportunity further down the field to intercept and then get those, I guess, scores off turnovers. So that's sort of how I see the game more so. So in terms of coach, Simon Goodwin I think is the choice given obviously Melbourne's start to the season, but that may well change. Obviously we had Collingwood beat Melbourne over the weekend, so whether Melbourne's form continues on quite the same level, we'll have to wait and see. I know Geelong with a healthy list, they're getting hot, and the Bulldogs are also an excellent team as well. So I'm not necessarily at this point tipping Melbourne to make the grand final. I think we're probably going to get a Geelong Bulldogs at this point in time, but Melbourne look like nonetheless a very solid top 4 team. So there's some of my general thoughts there. Some that I closely considered. So these I felt were the next best midfielders, but ultimately, again, as I've gone through in the video, and there's a pretty consistent theme of, I've really gone for, I guess, the midfielders that have, I guess, that forward component to them as well. So and even a Parrish, like he's been able to impact the scoreboard, hit those forward 50 targets. So they're the things I'm really looking for more so. And you can tell that with this theme as well. So with a Jack Steele, look, he can absolutely rack it up, strong tackler, he can impact the game more than his opponent more weeks than not. So he was one where I would have liked to have fit him in, but I just couldn't justify him ahead of anyone else that I had in there, honestly. So, but terrific midfielder, really, really high end, but yeah, just for me, like unless say Aliba drops off in the second half of the season and declines, I think that would be more sort of the avenue where maybe I could justify a Steele, or same with a Parrish if he drops off, that might be where a Steele might work his way in. Jack Mccrae, I'd imagine he'd be leading the comp in disposals by now. He'd be probably around the 35 disposal a game mark, which is absolutely phenomenal. So maybe I'm harsh in leaving him out, I feel like, but again, I just prefer those, I guess, dual position impact players, where if you can go through the midfield impact and then go forward in impact, it just really makes life for the other team just really hard to deal with. So I'd like to make room for a Mccrae, but again, I just couldn't quite fit him when you've got sort of, I guess, all these guys playing really good footy, and then you've also got the mid-forwards impacting games as well. And again, maybe a lot of people won't have a Bolton, a Dusty, or a Fife, but for me, just the way they've been playing and impacting games across the both positions, that's really what's appealed to me, just and made it too hard to not include them. And Jared Lyons I'd also like to give credit to as well. So he's been carrying that Brisbane midfield this year with nearly the sort of hobbled or out this year so far. So and he's been a phenomenal get, obviously. So great midfielder, contested stuff, clearance stuff, and even his pressure's been really good. One of the knocks at Brisbane was that his tackling and pressure was really poor. Well, his pressure's actually been really good. And if I'm to compare it to, say, a Sam Walsh as an example, who, based on what a lot of people have been saying about, oh, Walsh is a shoo-in for the All-Australian team this year. Well, if I'm to compare a Walsh to even a Jared Lyons as an example, well, their scoreboard impact would be, without looking at the stats, pretty similar. But then with the Lions, you've got a much stronger contested component, his stoppage work is much better, and even his pressure and tackling, I would say, is a little better too. So having all those components, and I'm someone where I'm a contested ball is king guy, so yeah, look, even I'd have a Lyons over, say, a Walsh at this point. And a Wines, look, he'd be behind a Lyons just due to his pressure not quite being on the same level, would be how I'd separate those guys there, and why I'd have this group here ahead of, let's say, those two. But some that I'd consider in the mix had they not missed so many games. So Jeremy Cameron. So on return, he's been absolutely terrific. So his form has been better for me than an Aaron Norton. So if I wanted another key forward, and let's say a Taylor Walker or a Tom Hawkins went out for the season, I'd be putting a Jeremy Cameron straight in, assuming his strong form really continues, which I'm sure it will. He's been playing really good footy. Shannon Hearn has had an incredible season. Had he not missed more games, he would be well inside my team, and I'd have him in there instead of a Brody Smith. So looking at, I guess, like, it's not only the meters game components, but then he still intercepts to a high level as well. And there was one game that I think was just a one disposal game. It would have been an injury interrupted game, and he's missed that stretch. But those games where he's played the full games, he's been really among the best defenders in the comp discussion. I'd have him up there, maybe just behind a Stewart, honestly, and possibly on par with a Salem when I've seen him. So for me, he's still right up there and really valuable. And you've got the leadership components too. So having all that, I want to give props to Shannon Hearn as well. Jeremy Mcgoverns, so for me, I've looked at him for a long time now as that perfect key defender where you don't have to be an athlete, but he intercepts like absolutely no one and patrols the airways like I've never seen in defence before. So being that contested marking and intercepting force, he can even rebound a little bit here and there. So, but being that really incredible interceptor, I'd really like to include him. And if I was to put in another key defender, had he not missed some games, then I'd probably have him in there, honestly. Patrick Dangerfield, look, he's barely played this year, and some will say, oh, it's just on reputation you've got him. But when he has played, he's still been really good. So he's not going to lose that contested side, and he's still going to be that forward 50 threat. So again, he's another who fits my model perfectly, where I would absolutely put him in the midfield ahead of really most of the midfielders. So if I could take out a Libba, I would to fit a Dangerfield absolutely any day of the week. So and then with Brody Grundy, so he had that neck injury a few weeks back, missed a few games. I believe he's coming back this weekend. So but if not for those games missed, look, I'd at least have him in the conversation with Gawn and Nick Nutt. He's even hit the scoreboard a little bit this season, which has been promising, but otherwise he's just been doing Brody Grundy things. So really, it's just a big three ruckman in the competition at the moment, given you've got Goldstein, who's dropped off a few steps this year. You've got Riley O'Brien, who hasn't been playing that well. You've got, obviously, Rowan Marshall, who's been hurt. So, yeah, you've currently got in the competition a big three group of rucks. And then again, if not out for the full season, Darcy Moore would be a strong consideration, given how good he's looked in defence, both not only intercepting and taking the contested grabs, but also with the drive he generates from defence, both with his run and kick respectively, because with all those components to his game, he's a huge weapon. So, yeah, he might have been, but yeah, doesn't make the team, obviously, given he's out for the rest of the year. So, this is what I came up with. Thanks for watching, guys, and if you enjoyed this video, make sure you like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for future updates, and let me know in the comments section below, what do you think of my team, and who should I have included that I didn't, or if you think I should have included someone, who do you feel should go out in their place? I'm more than happy to do a bit of a back and forth on why I included the guys I did. But yeah, apologies for not having my mic connected for the analysis component of the video, my bad. But yeah, hopefully I remember next time. So yeah, see you guys in the next video.